particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he is leaving for town.
Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
Guess that's why he looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish he'd allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. He might have a good influence over him, Miss Prison. You know, German, geology, things of that kind influence man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I do not think I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep diary and I can enter all the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I'd sure go figure all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is a diary we all carry about with us.
Yes, but memory usually chronicles the things that couldn't happen, or couldn't have ever happened. I believe that memory is responsible for all 3-volume novels that Muddy sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Gibson? How wonderfully clever you are. Did it end happily? I hope it didn't. I don't really like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so. But was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was abandoned. I use the word lost or mislaid. To your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
Oh, but I see dear Dr. Chodswell coming through the garden.
Dr. Chodswell, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prison, you are, I trust, well.
Miss Prison has been complaining of a slight headache. It would do you much good to go for a short stroll through the park with Dr. Chodswell.
Cecily, I've not mentioned anything about a headache.
Oh, no, you haven't, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. And of course I was thinking about that, not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
I'm afraid I am.
Strange, were I fortunate enough to meet Miss Prison's people, our fame upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from cheese. I suppose Mr. Worthing has not returned from town.
We do not look for him until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He's not one whose sole aim is enjoyment, unlike that unfortunate young man, his brother, seems to be. But I should not disturb again and people any longer.
Agaria. My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical illusion, really. Drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think I will have a stroll with you, dear Doctor. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prison. With pleasure. You might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of Rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German. Good thing I caught that.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Earnest Worthing, B4 the Albany. Did you tell Uncle Jack's brother? Did you tell Uncle Jack wasn't in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prison were in the garden. He seemed quite anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Pray tell the man to come out here. And you better ask the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
never met any truly wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm quite afraid he'll look like anybody else. He does.
You're my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You're under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than unusually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, from your card, I see, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not wicked at all, Cecily. You really mustn't think I'm wicked.
If you're not, and you've been truly been deceiving us all, pretending to be wicked and being good all the time, that would be hypocrisy.
Oh, well, of course I'm rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention it, I've been bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be proud of that, though I'm sure it's very pleasant.
It's much pleasanter being here with you.
I don't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to leave by the train Monday morning, for I have a business appointment in London that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Oh, I know, of course, how important it is to keep a business engagement, if one wants to retain any of the beauty of life, but I still think you should rather wait till Uncle Jack arrives. He wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He's gone out to buy your outfit.
I certainly won't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you'll require a necktie. Uncle Jack sent you to Australia.
Australia? I'd rather die.
Well, he said at dinner Wednesday night that you'd have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I received from the next world and Australia are not particularly encouraging. This world's good enough for me, Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid not that. That's why I want you before me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, Cecily.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Then would you mind here for myself this afternoon?
It is rather chaotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel good already.
You're looking a little worse.
That's because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. When one is going to lead entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. But might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite because I have a buttonhole first.
A Marshall meal.
No, I just have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't understand how you can speak to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You were the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare every sensible man like to be caught in.
Oh, I wouldn't care to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to speak to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Choswell. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, but a womanthrope never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so euphemistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But isn't a man equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
And often I've been told not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor is drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing,
Mr. Worthing?
this is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Mr. Worthing, I hope this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother,
More shameful deaths and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure?
dead,
Your brother Ernest, dead?
quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he'll profit by it.
Mr. Oiling, I offer my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing you were the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I had a telegram from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, Miss Prison, charity. No one is perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to droughts. Will the incident take place here?
No, he seems to express a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I feel that hardly points to any serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of manner in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful, or as in the present case, distressing. I've preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral on behalf of the Society of Prevention of Discontent among the upper orders. The bishop, who was present at the time, was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
Oh, that reminds me. You mentioned christenings. You do christen all right, don't you? I mean, you are continually christening.
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But in what particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. William? Your brother was, I believe, married, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child. No, Dr. Choswell. You see, I feel the need to be christened myself.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
Have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Although, I don't know if it would make you uncomfortable in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
You need have no apprehensions. The sprinkling and, indeed, the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no doubts. The sprinkling is all that is needed, or indeed, I believe, advisable. A weather so changeable, at what hour would you wish the ceremony to take place?
Oh, I might trot around about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have two similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that appeared in one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Poor Jenkins the carter, most hard-working man.
Oh, no, I don't see much fun in being christened along with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. Now, Mr. Worthing, I will no longer intrude into a house of sorrow. I only hope you are not too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Oh, Uncle Jack, I'm so glad to see you back. Oh, what horrid clothes you got on. Could you go and change them?
Cecily,
My child, my child.
Oh, do you look happy? You look as if you had a toothache. I do have a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother, Ernest. He came down half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother!
Oh, don't say that. I'm bad that he may have behaved in the past. He's still your brother. Couldn't use a heart of his own. I will go back inside and grab him, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
after we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John, I've come all the way down from London to say I'm deeply sorry for all the trouble I have given you, and I intend to live a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here is disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Don't say that. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has been telling me about his poor invalid friend Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be good in someone who leaves the pleasures of one pacified without pain.
Oh, he's been talking to you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he told me all about Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
I do admit the faults were all on my side. And in finding Brother John's close to me, peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering this is the first time I've come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I'll never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Then this will be the last time I ever do it.
It's beautiful, is it not? To see so perfect a reconciliation. I believe we might name the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prison, I feel my little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel. You have got to leave. I don't allow any Bunburying here.
I have put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to yours, sir.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have pushed in the room next to your own.
His luggage.
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and 1 large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid it can stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful lad you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered in my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I have no doubt about that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
I will not have you talk of Miss Carden like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't have to close. The perfectly ridiculous in them. It's oddly childish to be a deep one for a man. To after staying in her own house for a week as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You're not staying with me for a week as a guest or as anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. Being most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would do the same for me, I suppose. I would think it very unkind if you didn't.
Will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you aren't too long. I've never seen anyone take so long to dress with such little results.
At any rate, that's always better than being so immensely overdressed as you are.
If I'm a little immensely overdressed, I make up for it by always being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. But you have got to fetch the 4:05, and I hope you have a comfortable journey back. This Bunbury, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it's been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily and that is everything. But I must see her before I go and make plans for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
I was merely came back just to water the roses. Weren't you with Uncle Jack?
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Is it gonna take you on a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
And we've got to part.
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It's always painful to part from someone whom one has just met. The absence of old friends, one can endure the equanimity. But even the momentary separation from one whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you and state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me the very visible way of absolute perfection.
I think your braveness does you great credit, Ernest. If you'll allow me, I'll copy your remarks from my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? Have you anything to read it? May I?
Oh no! It's merely just a very young girl's record of her thoughts and impressions, and consequently made for publication. But I hope you order a copy if when it appears in volume form. But wait, Ernest, don't stop. I've gotten to absolute perfection. Don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should never cough. Besides, I don't even know how to spell cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have been to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you can tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't even make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog park is at the door, sir.
Tell her to come around next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much upset if he knew that you were staying at the same hour next week.
Oh, I don't care about Uncle Jack at all. I don't care for anyone in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Oh, why, of course. We've been engaged for the past 3 months.
For the last 3 months.
Yes, it'll be 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, a man who's much talked about seems always very attractive, does he not?
And when was the engagement actually settled?
On February 14th last, worn out by entire ignorance of my existence, I decided to end the matter one way or another, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. And the next day, I bought this little ring in your name and a little bangle with a true lover's sign I promised to always wear.
Did I hear this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, it's my excuse for you leading such a bad life, your good taste and all. Oh, and here are your letters.
My letters? My dear sweet Cecily, I have not written you any letters.
You needn't remind me of that, Ernest. I know only too well. But I was forced to write them for you. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Oh, would you let me read them, Cecily?
Oh no, it would make you far too conceited. And besides, the one you wrote to me after I'd broken off the engagement was so beautiful, so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Yes, on March 22nd. You can see the entry here if you'd like. Today I broke off the engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Well, why on earth did you break it off? What have I done? I don't know nothing at all, Cecily. I'm really hurt to hear you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would have hardly been a really actual engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
Good boy. Does your hair grow naturally?
Yes, with a little help from others.
I'm glad to hear it.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily.
I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. And besides, of course, there's the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
Don't laugh at me, darling, but it's always been a girlish dream of mine to marry a man whose name was Ernest. I pity a poor woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But my dear sweet child, do you mean to say you not love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like Algernon.
But my dear sweet Cecily, I really can't see why you object to the name Algernon. It is not all a bad name. In fact, it's a rather aristocratic name. Half the chaps in the bankruptcy court go by Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name were Algernon, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I don't think I could give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your director here is familiar with all the rites and ceremonials of the church, correct?
Oh, yes. Dr. Charles Bull's the most learned man. He's never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I'm still the most important christening, I mean, the most important business.
Oh?
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
The fact that I only met you today for the first time, I think it's rather hard for you to leave me for such a long period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I'll copy his remarks in my diary.
Miss Fairfax, you just called over Mr. Worthing. On very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Is Mr. Worthing in his library?
No, miss. Mr. Worthing was headed over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Oh, Mr. Ernest, Mr. Worthing should be back anytime soon. Pray tell the lady to come out here. You can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose it's one of the good elderly women who are related to Uncle Jack and his philanthropic work. I don't like women who are interested in philanthropic work. It's so very forward of them. introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me that we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
So glad of you to like me so much, even though we just met. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure,
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
if you'd like.
Then that is not quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't believe so.
Outside the family circle, Papa is, I am glad to say, entirely unknown. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for man. And certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be incredibly short-sighted. So do you mind if I look at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I quite like being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years, resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother. Nor, in fact, any relations.
Indeed?
Yes. My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, have the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes. I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But now that I know that you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish you were, well, a bit older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly,
Pray do. I think when everyone has something unpleasant to say, one should be quite candid.
well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were full 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He's the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the highest possible moral standards are highly susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, provides us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, history would be, indeed, unreadable.
Excuse me, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes?
But it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who's my guardian. It's his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say, but they have not been on good terms as of late.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Though you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
My dear Gwendolyn, there's no reason why I should make it a secret of it to you. My little county newspaper is sure to call a book back next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My dearest Cecily, there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
There must be some misunderstanding, because Ernest proposed to me exactly 5 minutes ago.
It is certainly strange, for he proposed to me yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid that I have a prior claim.
It would distress me more, dear Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
My poor boy may have been entrapped into an engagement. I will never reapproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you think, Miss Fairfax, that I entangled Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing shallow mask of manners.
Shall I lay the tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, quite many. From one's hill quite close, you can see at least 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that's why you live in London?
Quite a well-kept garden, this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here as people are in London.
It is beyond me how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Oh, this is what the newspaper call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe their aristocracy are suffering from it as of most presently. Would you like some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl. But I require tea.
Would you like any sugar, Miss Fairfax?
No, thank you. Sugar is no longer fashionable.
Would you like tea? Would you like cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths of which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I never see in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
Seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. Certainly you have many other calls of similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest. A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
Dear little Cecily, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you, Meg.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding. The man whose arm is present around your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment. Tell me, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Yes, good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean, Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What can Mr. Shine do in your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon. Oh! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name most certainly is John. It's been John for years.
Gross deception has been practiced on us both.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wrong, Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
Yes. But there is one question I'd like to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be allowed to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn. Cecily. It pains me very much to be reduced to such a small position. I've never been reduced to anything in my life, and I'm quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I may tell you quite candidly that I have no brother, Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother in the past, and no intent on ever having one in the future.
No brother at all.
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear to me, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It's not a good position to find a young girl in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bunburying, I suppose?
Yes, and a wonderful Bunbury it is. Most advanced Bunbury I ever had in my life.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to bunbury here.
Well, nothing, sir. We're not going to Bunbury where everyone chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious bunburyist, good heavens.
Well, one is confused about some things, if one was of any use in life. What on earth are you serious about? I can't make out. But everything is your fancy. You have an absolutely trivial nature.
The one good thing that has come from this is you won't be able to come down to the country quite so often, as your friend Mr. Bunbury is quite exploded.
Your brother is a little off color, isn't he, Hugh Jack? You won't go up to London as frequently as your custom was, and not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I say you taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense for you deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax, is another the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn. That is all. I love her.
I simply want to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of you marrying Miss Cardew.
I can see no possible way of you and Fairfax being united.
Well, that is none of your business.
It was my business. I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's own business. Only people like stock will do that, and then really third parties.
How you can sit there, calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble I can't take out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The better probably be like us. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. Besides, I really like muffins.
That is no use of you eating them all in that greedy way.
At the present moment, I'm eating these muffins because I'm unhappy. As anyone who knows me intimately would tell you, I refuse everything out of food and drink. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
It's particularly heartless that you're eating them at all.
I wish we'd have the tea cake instead. I would like tea cake.
I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said it was perfectly heartless to eat the muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you. There's a difference.
Yes, but the muffins are the same.
Algernon, why don't you go?
You can't possibly ask me to go by having some dinner first. The only people who leave out having dinner are vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I just made arrangements with Dr. Choswell to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
The sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements with Dr. Choswell this morning to be christened at 5:30, and I naturally will take the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We both can't be christened Earnest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened. There is no evidence at all that I have ever been christened, and I should think it extremely probable that I never was. And Dr. Choswell agrees. It is entirely different in your case. You have been christened.
Yes, but I've been christened in years.
Yes, but you have been christened.
Yes, so my constitution can stand it. However, since you think you've never been christened, I'd say it's very dangerous to venture on it now. Did you forget we had a dear friend in Paris who just carried off by a severe chill?
But you said yourself that wasn't hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
Oh, that's nonsense. You always talk nothing but nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I told you I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Algernon, why don't you go? I have already asked you to leave.
I haven't finished my tea yet, and there's still one muffin left.